The following is a production of KXLY-4, Spokane, Washington, and the Murphy Entertainment Group, Madison, Wisconsin.
This is a Boeing B-52 Stratofortress. These airplanes used to be a familiar sight in the skies over Spokane. The B-52 was first assigned to Fairchild Air Force Base in 1957. The last one stationed out here crashed in 1994, killing 4 people. Good evening, I'm Pete Fredwell. We thought it was important to remember the B-52 not for how it crashed, but for how it flew, and flew proudly over Spokane for 37 years. So we went back through the bomber's family album, from its birth certificate in 1948 to its missions around the world still today. Well, this is a story about a machine. It's told in the words of people whose lives are part of its history. We hope to leave you with a memory of the B-52 as a giant in the sky.
In 1957, U.S. military bases around the world were on alert. It was the beginning of the Cold War. Back then, the '57 Chevy was a new car. Blueberry Hill was a new song. And Air Force pilots were being assigned to a new bomber called the B-52.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
New car?
Yes, it is. I just got it a couple of weeks ago. I just got transferred up here from Randolph.
Well, welcome to Fairchild, sir.
Could you direct me toward the 325th Bomb Squadron?
Straight ahead and right at the big hangar.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Today, the Cold War is history. The '57 Chevy is a classic, and Blueberry Hill is a golden oldie. But the B-52 remains a giant in the sky.
I feel it's the weapon that won the Cold War. I feel very proud to fly it.
It's a big plane, it's huge. And when you actually see it fly and you know that your husband is doing that, it's just overwhelming.
Oh, it's one of my favorite airplanes. It's a wonderful machine.
It's no dog, but it's got a lot of bite in it. It's got a lot of life.
This is going to be one of the great planes that exists from here to eternity.
No, she's a grand old lady.
We had great faith in the airplane. If we ever had to take it to war, we knew that it would bring us home.
The B-52 was born in the dawn of the Cold War with one purpose: to release more firepower in a single attack than has ever been delivered in the history of the world. But the B-52 has never been called upon to perform the mission for which it was designed. Its first combat duty was, instead, to drop conventional bombs, 100 at a time, over Vietnam. The B-52 quickly gained a reputation as the most feared weapon in the Vietnam War. It earned that reputation again in its second combat duty, delivering a third of all Allied bombs over Iraq in the Gulf War.
We're going to upload 51 Mark 82 airs.
The B-52's capability as a conventional bomber is the mission most often practiced in today's Air Force. This mission involves 2 B-52s from Spokane's Fairchild Air Force Base in a live bomb drop over the Utah test range, with an aerial refueling along the way. Each aircraft is loaded with 51 Mark 82 bombs. Just one could destroy a house.
It keeps you on your toes, makes you think about what you're doing, keeps you alert, makes you realize that you are a human.
While ground crew members prepare the aircraft, flight crew members are briefed on the mission.
Code word of the day is payday.
Elevation 6,500.
The letter is M.
You'll fly 73 in this area.
In the target area itself, you're going to find just some light AAA.
And come across, once you get cleared hot, let them all go. 51 of them should come off. If you got any hangers, come back around, left turn off target, and try to release them on your second time.
Sergeant 1 Fairchild Tower, roger.
Then the mission begins.
K-2's ready, taxi. Proud, moon wheel chocks, distracted or phone.
Roger, have a good flight.
Sergeant 1 Fairchild Tower, roger, wind 210 or 11, gust 19.
Air brakes. Hot.
Flaps.
100%. Looking out pilot.
Cool. Are we coming up on a turn here?
Yeah, stand by and trim yourself. Going right, crosswind crowd.
Clear right.
All right, you got 2, 4, 6, 8, right, tracking.
What's it look like outside? Inside, gray in front of us, but there's some sunshine kicking through, so.
Sorry, 01 heavy, fly runway heading, wind 230 at 9, clear for takeoff.
Look good? We're ready to go, guys. Towers coming up.
All right, we got 8 good engines, pushing through. Star 01 flight approved.
Spanky, man, you flying?
Yeah.
All over the place. Give it to Gonzo. He's smooth.
Smooth.
10,000 comedians out of work.
Halfway through the mission, somewhere over the Rocky Mountains, a gas station is waiting at 30,000 feet.
Hi, tally-ho.
You got him?
Coming across 12 o'clock right now.
Got lead off the nose, 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the toad at 12.
The gas station is a KC-135. It provides global reach to the bomber's global power.
Should have the bombers on the left side. 1 mile. Refueling the B-52 is pretty interesting here. They're like our main receivers out of Fairchild. I'd hate to see them go. It's you can feel it quite a bit up front as far as the actual refueling, the aircraft moving around back behind you. You get an aircraft bigger than you behind you, it really affects your aircraft quite a bit. You get quite a bow wave off it. So it's a lot of fun. There's 40. There's 30. 20. A little bit off to the right. 10 feet. 5. And contact. The first time I refueled receiver was kind of scary. You got an instructor with you, but you don't really know what you're doing. You've done it in a simulator, but you're still well unsure. You see an aircraft come that close, it really scares you. But once you do for a while, now you get used to it. Count 3, 3, breakaway, breakaway, breakaway.
With the refueling done, it's time for the bomber to go to work.
Looks like you're clear to descend.
To avoid getting picked up on radar, the pilot dives to just a few hundred feet above the ground.
Cleared on range and cleared hot.
And makes the final push toward the target through waves of low-level turbulence.
So, sir, 1 flight, cleared on range, cleared hot. Thank you, sir.
Welcome to combat altitudes.
This is what it would be like if we were at war. This is where we'd be living.
Except we'd be going faster and we'd be getting shot at.
That's right.
Finally, the target is near, just over that ridge.
Running the bomb configuration check. Bomb inhibit is off.
External arm switch.
External arm switch is armed.
Here we go, fellas.
Showtime. Put on your war face.
That's right.
Show me your war face. Altitude is good.
1 mile.
RCD is connected. Light is on.
Checklist.
Checklist is done.
20 seconds. Ready? Here we go.
Flares going out. Chaff going out.
Flares are released to fool heat-seeking missiles. Chaff is tossed to fool radar-guided missiles. Then the bombs.
Doors coming open.
Doors
are gonna-
open.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hack.
Oh, man, it looks like we got some secondary stuff.
This is a day at the office when you fly a B-52.
The best part about the job is probably getting to go out and drop weapons, because you actually get to see, there's real-life feedback of what you do, and it's a sense of achievement, I guess, or de-achievement if you blow something up. But that's what it's all about, is getting to blow stuff up.
That was awesome fun, guys. Thanks.
Just ahead, never-before-seen film of the B-52's first flight. The Boeing Airplane Company was born in Seattle, Washington in the spring of 1917. No one who worked for the company back then in this modest red barn could ever have imagined that Boeing would someday build an aircraft with a wingspan greater than the Wright brothers' first powered flight.
Well, I think that people that were like Churchill and Roosevelt had decided they really ought to work toward getting the capability to put bombs in Germany from outside of Europe. So they needed a very long-range airplane. And that was the basis. And it had to be a big airplane in order to be real long-range. And that prompted a request for proposal from Wright Field. And I don't remember the exact dates, but somewhere around 45, 46, around in there. And at that time, all you could have a chance of doing it with was a big turboprop engine. And so that's basically what the B-52 program started out trying to accomplish.
Bob Withington joined the Boeing company in 1941, where one of his first projects was to perform wind tunnel tests for the B-47, the first swept-wing jet bomber in the world. That experience would serve him well one weekend in 1948 on another Boeing project.
I happened to be in Dayton that week for a B-55 review. I was quite well aware of the B-52 problems. They'd been working for 2 or 3 years with big turboprops, and there was getting to be a real serious technical problem of making the big propellers. They were big 4-bladed counter-rotating propellers, massive gearboxes, and much bigger props than had ever been built before, and the technical problems were just insurmountable.
The decision was made that weekend in the Van Cleve Hotel to switch the B-52 from a propeller airplane to a jet. The people in the room included Withington, Ed Wells, George Scherer, Von Blumenthal, Art Carlson, and Maynard Pennell.
We knew that the B-52 program had a high risk of being canceled if we didn't turn this thing around. And we thought the best opportunity was to make a pure jet out of it. And that's what we did. So we had our work cut out for us. We knew pretty well what we had to do. We had to produce a document describing the airplane, and we didn't know about this model business. Shire just went down and bought a bunch of balsa and sat in the corner all weekend.
While Withington and Blumenthal detailed the group's ideas on paper, Scherer started carving those ideas into a block of balsa wood. Together, they envisioned the largest bomber the world had ever seen, with a remarkable wing. It would have variable thickness, 35 degrees of sweepback, and 4,000 square feet of surface area.
I think by about Saturday afternoon, we had things pretty well set out, and we knew what we had to do. And Saturday evening, and we didn't stay up all night, we put it together Sunday morning, and about noon on Sunday, we had it ready to go to be typed. And that was done Sunday afternoon by the secretary of the local Boeing office.
The first line on the cover sheet asked for the internal Boeing document number. Not having a document number and on a Sunday unable to call back to Seattle to get one, the engineers picked their own. The number 10,000 sounded high enough to be safe, so document number 10,000 was typed up, all 33 pages of it, to describe Boeing's aircraft number 464490. The proposal became the birth certificate for the B-52. 2 prototypes of the aircraft were built, the XB-52 and its twin, the YB-52. Boeing's chief test pilot at the time, Tex Johnston, remembers watching the airplanes come together at the Boeing Plant 2 complex.
As far as I'm concerned, just another airplane, but the thing that I was really intrigued with was a flex wing. Well, that's what you need for those kind of airplanes, so they don't have to put so damn much weight in them because they flex and relieve the loads.
Wing flex was a new feature on the B-52. Engineers designed the wings to actually flex up and down as much as 32 feet during stresses in flight. One feature the Air Force was not impressed with was the tandem or inline cockpit. The commander-in-chief of the Strategic Air Command, General Curtis LeMay, hated it. Tex Johnston remembers pointing this out to Boeing engineers while awaiting LeMay's inspection of the B-52 mock-up.
But I said, hey, you better get ready because LeMay's going to tell you if he likes what he sees about performance and so forth, but he won't accept that tandem cockpit. I've flown with it too many times in the B-47, and that's all he does is bitch about the goddamn tandem cockpit. And I'm feeling exactly the same way. To talk to your co-pilot, if you got an emergency, you have to sit there and hold the goddamn button. If he's sitting right here, you can holler at him.
Lieutenant General Curtis E. LeMay was Commander-in-Chief of the Strategic Air Command, a man of legendary reputation even then. LeMay was used to getting his way, and his way meant the pilot and co-pilot would sit side by side.
You can't imagine how LeMay was regarded by the people in Congress who thought it was a spendthrift. They had this perfectly good fleet of B-47s, and he's going to phase it out in 3 years and bring in this big monster of an airplane that's too big for human beings to really handle and will never get off the ground and all the rest of it. And he insisted, against much opposition within his own service, on the B-52, and he was just right, that's all.
The first B-52 was rolled out under cover of darkness and a blanket of muslin cloth at 9 o'clock in the evening on November 29, 1951. The Air Force was taking no chances with its biggest new secret. The ground and taxi tests went well over the next few months. Then came the flight tests.
That hilltop over there above the hangars, where you see that green field, I was up in that area, and it was April the 15th, 1952.
Rumors about a new airplane travel quickly in an aviation community like Seattle. Dick Marshall was among those who had heard a huge new bomber was about to take off from Boeing Field.
Nothing happened for a while, but then you could see this airplane was sitting over here, not on the runway, but off the end of the field, and then it finally began to move. And I think I was there maybe an hour watching and waiting, and began to move, and it taxied out, and then they spent quite a bit of time on the end of the runway, as you would, and Tex Johnson was the test pilot, and pretty soon it began to roll, and I thought, well, this is a historic moment of some kind, and not being a big airplane man, I was fascinated because it looked, the wing spread was, you know, wider than the runway practically, and so it was a very big airplane, and it flew very well.
The YB-52 lifted off the ground at 11:09 Tuesday morning, April 15, 1952. The next day's Seattle Post-Intelligencer called the new Boeing bomber Queen of the Skies. An aviation legend had been born.
Seattle and first films of America's newest global bomber, Boeing's B-52 Stratofortress. The giant swept-wing bomber is powered by 8 jet engines said to be the most powerful in the world. Test pilot and crew are hand-picked to fly the aerial dreadnought that makes a wartime B-17 look like a Piper Cub by contrast. Ordered into production before the first plane had been completed or flown, the B-52 is believed to fly faster and higher than any other bomber in existence today. Two prototypes have been completed. Boeing is now tooling up for undisclosed production, each plane to cost many millions. On landing, a parachute is released. Acts like a brake to slow the bomber down. Watch. Latest in a long line of Sky Queens, the B-52 represents the latest answer to the growing power of aerial defenses. Guided missiles may someday render bombers like it obsolete, but until that time, the B-52 will play a big role in keeping the peace.
It was really a kind of relief, and it's like you've gotten ready to play a ball game for a long time, and finally you got the kickoff.
Colonel Guy Townsend was the Air Force representative and co-pilot on that first flight. He was sitting behind Tex in the tandem cockpit.
We didn't have any doubt at all that the airplane would fly. You know, we had taxied the airplane, and we had a tremendous amount of confidence and a tremendous amount of cooperation between us and the engineers and the people who were building the airplane, and it was just a matter of finding out what the airplane really, what we had really hadn't figured out before. Just like meeting somebody new, you know, I mean, you got to find out what makes them tick.
The first production B-52 was delivered to the Strategic Air Command in 1955. As General LeMay had requested, its pilot and co-pilot would sit side by side.
At Castle Air Force Base, California, the B-52, America's biggest and newest jet bomber, goes into squadron service with the Strategic Air Command.
One of my favorite airplanes. It's a wonderful machine. I like to fly it. And it carries enough fuel to go somewhere, and it's got enough space in the bomb bay, and particularly the kind of bombs we got today, that you can level most anyone's real estate out for them.
Tex Johnston had a tradition in his flight test career of having a pair of boots custom made for every aircraft he took up on its first flight. The boots he wore during the B-52's maiden flight are now at the Museum of Flight near Boeing Field. The balsam model carved at the Van Cleve Hotel in 1948 has been copied several times, but the original model never leaves the Boeing archives in Seattle. The Boeing company has outgrown its Plant 2 complex where the first B-52s were made. Work pallets here sit mostly empty now, and the old wooden floors echo only sounds of the past. As for the original XB and YB-52, prototypes of the longest-serving aircraft in U.S. military history, they were cut up for scrap. Up next, how many bolts do you think hold the wing on the B-52? You'll be surprised at the answer.
I could tell you the unclassified version. It means a big, ugly, fat fellow. But, you know, in the military, it's probably been inflated and expanded beyond that. But that's probably the best iteration for BUFF. So, but everybody refers to it as the Buff. That's what it's always been.
The B-52 has been built in 8 different versions, starting with the first A model in 1954 and ending with the last H model in 1962. In all, Boeing produced 742 B-52s for the U.S. Air Force, an average of 1 bomber every 4 days for 8 years. Most of them were built at Boeing's Military Aircraft Division in Wichita, Kansas.
The operation was very noisy, extremely noisy. You had to wear earplugs.
Merle Stone spent 7 years on the B-52 assembly line in Wichita. He remembers watching the huge wing being lifted into place and fastening it to the fuselage with only 4 bolts.
It's set down from the top side, and the bolts that hold the wing on were 9-inch bolts. Looked like a big milk bottle. They were about that long. And they're about to big around the base. There's only 4 that held the wing on.
The B-52 is like no other airplane, and like no airplane most pilots get to fly. It has no ailerons, those control surfaces on the ends of the wings that cause an airplane to bank left or right in a turn. Instead, the B-52 uses spoilers.
And we went to lateral control spoilers because of the flex wing with just the aileron at high Qs, high speed, Qs the airspeed over the wing. If you crank in a lot of aileron control, it twists the wing. And it started getting up at those speeds. It was, you had to be careful about, or you could actually crank it in so much it changed the angle of attack of the wing till it damped out or maybe started to go the other direction.
The B-52 is like no other airplane on the ground either. Because of the aircraft's huge wing, landing in a crosswind can be tough. So engineers developed a crosswind crab control which lets pilots point the nose of their aircraft 20 degrees left or right, while the landing gear still tracks straight ahead.
You put your crab in towards the wind, so now you're flying like, you know, you're flying a path like this, straight down, with your nose cocked off to the side, and you're actually flying this way. My nose is pointed over here. I'm going to land right down over there. So it's a hands, eyes, hopefully your feet and your heart are all in the same place at one time, and it can be exciting. First couple times I did it was very exciting.
While the Boeing company was building the B-52 to deliver a nuclear strike against the Soviet Union, this is what the Soviets were building to deliver the same against us, the Tupolev Tu-95, NATO codename Bear. The first Bear flew in 1954, 2 years after the first B-52. Both airplanes have 35-degree swept-back variable thickness wings. But where the B-52 uses 8 jets, the Bear uses 8 counter-rotating propellers.
Well, it was serious competition in the sense of the amount of resources that the mother country lavished upon it in terms of production units and its weight in the inventory, I don't believe it would have penetrated with the same degree of success that the B-52 would have penetrated Russia, although we made that easier successively by the way we reduced our interceptor arm over the years. It was simply not the airplane that the B-52 was. Oddly enough, one of the prototype designs for the B-52 was very similar in appearance to the Bear.
As with any old machine, maintenance is the key to keeping it going. With dozens of systems approaching a half-century in service, keeping the B-52 going isn't easy.
I have a '64 Volkswagen, for instance, and I can still get parts for that because you have aftermarket people building the components that I may need, the parts. The B-52, the problem we have with this airplane is availability. You just don't have, say, to go down to the local parts store or order something and expect them to have it. Sometimes they have to go to the boneyard down at Davis Mountain for it.
Each plane has their own personality. Some of them are really stubborn. Some of them are really, they don't want to fly. You got to push and kick them out of bed just to get them to fly in the morning. But some of them, you got to tickle them on the belly, right there underneath the belly, and give them a little rub and pat on the back, so it'd be all right. It's a lot of fun, though.
Next, meet the people who bring the buff to life.
Probably the best bomber ever built. The classic guys, you know, fighter guys make movies, bomber guys make history.
The most important system aboard the B-52 is something no engineer designed: the crew. The B-52 flies with a crew of 5, 2 pilots, 2 navigators, and an electronic warfare officer. A 6th crew position, the tail gunner, was eliminated in the fall of 1991. Each has a specific task in the mission. The pilot in charge of the aircraft is called the aircraft commander. He sits in the left seat. Aircraft Commander Spanky Barber feels the switch to a side-by-side cockpit was a good idea.
You bet, because now you can reach over and grab your co-pilot and shake him awake or something, yeah. No, actually, I think we do a lot of nonverbal communication, and if you were in tandem, you wouldn't be able to see the guy and do that. So sometimes if the one guy's got his head down and he's busy working on the fuel panel or something, he'll just tap you on the shoulder and point at the throttles or point somewhere else and, hey, I'm down, you have the airplane.
The front office on a B-52 is fundamentally similar to other jet aircraft, except there are 8 of everything. 8 engine pressure ratio gauges, 8 tachometers, 8 exhaust gas temperature gauges, 8 fuel flow meters, and 8 throttles.
You sit there and go, wow, he's got quite a memory. All that stuff, and I know he knows what just about all of it is. And he's so familiar with it, you know. It's like getting into a new car, and it's got all the newer cars have all the fancy dials and everything, and you think, I'm never going to learn this. And then you do one day and you don't think about it. And when I watch him, it's just like that. It's part of him. The airplane is part of him. But I just am awestruck when I get in there. I'm awestruck when I get in a little bitty airplane with him. And there's still one too many dials for me up there.
The other pilot sits in the right seat. He controls the fuel panel, electrical panel, and general operation of the aircraft.
In terms of airplanes, it's a pig. I think it's a pig. It handles really, if I want to make it turn, there's some airplanes out there, if you put a control sponge in, it happens right now. For a B-52, you put it in there and you count for, you know, a couple of heartbeats, and then now it decides, okay, I'll turn with you now, Rene. If you want it to do something, you make it do it. There's other airplanes, if you just think about doing it, and it's already done it. This one, you've got to anticipate doing it, and then you've got to do it, and then you've got to wait for it to happen. So you got to stay ahead of this airplane.
One thing the B-52 does not share with other jets, particularly commercial jets, is creature comfort. For all its immense size, it's almost as if the crew compartment was an afterthought.
It's small. For as big as the airplane is, the actual seating space that they have is very limited. And if you have long legs or if you're very tall, it's not very much room at all. And then the seats themselves are very uncomfortable. I remember when my husband very first got to Castle Air Force Base for the B-52 training, and we ran into somebody there, and he said the first thing you need to do to get prepared to fly a B-52 from pilot training to make the transition easier is to get a 2x4 plank, sit it across a couple of things in a room, and sit on it naked for 8 hours, because that's what it's going to be like sitting in that cockpit.
The electronic warfare officer sits on the main deck, facing backwards. He runs defenses for the aircraft, including chaff, flares, and radar jamming.
Me personally, I wouldn't want to go to war without a guy running the defenses. It's basically the defenses are all that stand between the B-52 and enemy threats, whether it be ground threats, missiles, or AAA on the ground or aircraft. So without the EW, you're pretty much out of there.
The electronic warfare station is still classified. For reasons of national security, we can't show you what it looks like. This is, after all, a war machine, something that is still a fresh memory for those families touched by the Gulf War.
You just wait. That's pretty much all you can do. You get together with all the other wives and try not to go insane. I was lucky at the time he deployed, we didn't have any kids, but the wives who did had a real tough time trying to explain why Daddy isn't coming home and where Daddy is, and they see the war on the news and think, my daddy's dying, you know, and that part of it. So you just try and hold tight and keep busy and realize how much you really do appreciate them when they're gone.
The Navigator sits downstairs on the right-hand side of the aircraft. He directs the plane's course.
At 350 miles an hour, it's 350 miles an hour is a mile about every 10 seconds. And that's moving quite fast. So the pilots don't have time to think about, you know, if I tell them we're a mile right of track or a mile left of course, they're going to correct on my call. And if our electronic warfare officer says he's got a threat and we need to move, they're going to react to it because there's no time, you know, no time to mess around.
We have good coordinates through here. He aims on there, and that'll help calibrate the system.
The Navigator's stations on a B-52 have no windows. Here, the outside world is seen on a television screen through infrared and low-light television cameras.
The bomb's going to go crossways 660 feet. We're going to drop at 3,200 or 32,000 feet short of the target. So it comes off like this and hits.
It would be just about enough room for myself and another chair to sit here with maybe a foot between. And then there's panels all the way around with buttons all over, and it's dark. And well, I mean, there are lights, but it's just very small. You can't move around very much. When we loaded all of his stuff on the plane the other day, he's like, there's a shelf back there, put my lunch over there. You know, I'm looking around trying to see where everything is. I'm like, where? And so you're just putting everything in these little spots, and I'm just like, wow. It's just incredible.
The radar navigator sits downstairs on the left-hand side of the plane. He aims at the target and drops the bombs, a task that is both art and science.
It's art. From an engineer, it's art, which is against what I believe in. The science is in knowing what's going to happen, but the actual radar and tuning, the older I get, the more it becomes an art and the less it is of a science. When you first teach people it is a science and they want a checklist and they want to do it this way, and then it becomes feel. The better you get, the more you feel.
To describe the location, I would say it's like a tiny little box. And he's just stuck in this tiny little box with another person on the other side. And there's no really windows or anything like that, but they do have this little, it's like a little TV that you can look outside. And it doesn't show a very clear picture. It's kind of like a black and white TV, we could call it, except for it's green and light green color. And that's kind of the area that he's in. And whenever the engine is on, the area just shakes. I don't see how he does it. I hate flying in the first place, but if I was ever in his job, I would be sick all the time. I just can't stand it.
That is traditionally the place where people get sick, is because it's hot and it's dark and you don't really have a window to the world. And we always like to tease fighter guys when we give them a ride in our plane that if you really want to see what it's like, go down to the Bat Cave and see what hell's all about.
The crews were extraordinarily proficient. They could get a lot out of the airplane that had never been designed into it. They could compensate for many of the airplane's difficulties. And it is in two ways. One is by endurance, by just gutting out a miserable mission in an airplane that would fatigue you and then getting you ready and going again. They also did it by combining the techniques of their radar and by their navigation and by their in-flight refueling and so forth, so that the airplane was really day in and day out delivering a bargain to the Americans, and people were generally unaware of it.
He has a really, really neat job because he meets a lot of really interesting people. And I think that I'm really proud of him. very proud of what he does.
Roger 1.
And at launch came the busiest 10 minutes of my life.
The B-52 is the biggest, most stable platform in the U.S. Air Force. So when NASA engineers were looking for a vehicle to launch the X-15, they attached it to the wing of a B-52.
As Milt Thompson said, the X-15 was the only airplane he ever flew where he was glad when the engine quit.
The X-15 was America's first space vehicle, and those who flew her became America's first astronauts. The X-15 had only 90 seconds of fuel on board, but in that short time accelerated to more than 6 times the speed of sound and flew for several minutes on the edge of space. Bill Dana flew the last X-15 mission in 1968.
And the ride under the wing of the B-52 isn't very exciting. It's just exactly like flying in an airliner, except you have your own private room with windows on both sides of you. So that part is pretty mundane, but I'll tell you, a part of the B-52 X-15 mission that wasn't near as benign as it appeared like it should be, and that was being launched off the wing of the B-52. The X-15 pilot had the access to the launch switch himself, so the X-15 pilot caused the launch to happen, but I was still never failed to be amazed at the severity of the launch. Even though I fell away at 0 Gs, it always felt like I was at negative Gs, as though I had been fired off the B-52 pylon by a cannon.
NASA used 2 B-52s for the X-15 launches. This ship, number 003, was retired in 1966. She now sits at the Pima Air and Space Museum in Arizona. Her sister ship, 008, is still in active service at the NASA Dryden Flight Research Facility at Edwards Air Force Base in California. This is the oldest flying B-52 in the fleet and is also the youngest, having logged just over 2,000 hours in the air. 008 is still contributing to the space program, most recently as a test bed for the parachutes that now help bring the space shuttle to a safe stop back on Earth.
The B-52 has been around aerospace as long as I have. In fact, the B-52 flew its first flight the year I started pilot training, so we are contemporaries, and we're both getting into our old age at the same time. But it's a very charismatic airplane. It has graceful lines and commands a little bit of awe when you see it not in the presence of a 747. And it's done a marvelous job in protecting our country, and I do have a warm spot in my heart for the B-52.
I was a mechanic on the engines in 1964, 65. Now I'm beating swords into plowshares. Have to look, and there's got to be a reason for doing this. There's got to be a good reason.
This is where old airplanes go to die, a place called the Boneyard at the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona. This is the final resting place for more than 300 B-52s, mostly D, E, and F models that served in Southeast Asia.
Yes, the answer is yes. It's difficult. But I also knew it's doing something that's worthwhile.
Under the terms of the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty, all of these airplanes must be destroyed. More than 100 have already met the executioner's guillotine. Every week, the blade drops on 3 more B-52s. The carcasses are left out in the sun like dying whales, so Russian satellites may confirm their destruction.
To satisfy the terms of the treaty, they lay here for 90 days, and then the disposal organization puts them on sale. Contractor buys them and chops them up and hauls them out and makes aluminum out of them again.
Aluminum, which once defended a nation, will live again as an airliner or perhaps a soda can.
Let's not forget that heavy strategic bombing, as ugly as it is the way we win wars, because that makes people quit. And the comparison that, you know, they're with the new weapon systems that they can aim on the front door and knock it down, that's nice, but aiming on the house and knocking the whole block down, that makes people quit. So, and when it's all said and done, that's what we did. You know, we made people quit, and we make people quit hard. So let's not, as we change technology, let's not forget that massive firepower in the heavy B-52, and that weapon system served well, and we need to keep some capable system like that into our future.
There has probably never been a more feared weapon created by man up until now. Everybody in the whole world, they may not be able to point at a B-52 and say, yeah, that's a B-52, but if you say B-52, they know that that's a big bomber and it's coming to do a lot of damage.
The B-52 was a common sight in the skies over Spokane for 37 years. Then the Cold War ended, and the enemy the B-52 had been aimed at all those years faded away.
We have received a message from Air Force that releases a little bit of transition news for Fairchild Air Force Base.
The end of the Cold War means the end of the B-52 at Fairchild. The base is reassigned as the world's largest tanker base, beginning a series of firsts and lasts in the history of the B-52 at Fairchild. B-52 number 0045 is the first B-52 to leave Fairchild. It becomes the first bomber ever to be transferred from active duty to the Air Force Reserve. 0045 is now with the 93rd Bomb Squadron at Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. B-52 number 1040, the last B-52 ever built, is the last B-52 to leave Fairchild. It is also the last bomber to have its Seahawk mascot and FC tail markings painted over.
I was a year old when it came off the assembly lines.
Captain Spanky Barber will fly his last flight on a B-52 in the last B-52 ever built, on the last B-52 flight out of Fairchild. This airplane has been reassigned to Minot Air Force Base, North Dakota. Barber and the Buff make their last salute to Fairchild together.
My very first image of a Boeing B-52 was from a book that I read as a young boy, and this is actually the same book, which I've kept to this day. But it was looking at this picture and thinking that something that large could fly, and I remember being so impressed by the fact that all the details were still secret. You know, big, awesome, 200-foot-long airplane, and they couldn't say anything about it because it was all classified. So to a young kid, that's pretty hot stuff.
While the Fairchild Seahawk may have been painted over on the bombers, Air Force artist Mike Michaud is painting it in the last official portrait of a B-52 with Fairchild markings.
This painting will hang in the Pentagon for 2 years. It is a representation of what the Air Force calls its current history. And when they give tours through the Pentagon, the people that come through the hallways there in the Air Force hallway will see this painting amongst many others of events that happened in the last 2 years of Air Force history, and the guides will point out that this was a Fairchild B-52, that the base is now transitioned, and these airplanes are part of history.
So now, through your kind invitation, I think we'll take our camera crew for a little flight in the B-52. Certainly welcome to join us. Come along.
Originally designed to last only a decade, the B-52 is now pushing 50 and is still in active service, making her the longest-lived airplane in U.S. Air Force history. Many of those who fly her today are sons of retired B-52 crewmen, and the sons of these men will likely fly her too before she's retired.
Incidentally, a number of very interesting technical studies have been done about that, about why this airplane has been able to stay in the service and do a creditable job as long as it has. It's still doing a creditable job today. And it was the reason that the airplane had, to begin with, it had a very advanced jet engine on it for that day. And the second thing it is, the airplane had a very efficient airfoil.
There are things out on the horizon that nobody's anticipating that will make it fly for a lot longer than anybody thinks, and that is you'll have a force structure in which You'll have theoretically B-1s and B-2s as your main elements, and your B-52s as reserve items. Then you'll have a series of budget cuts, and all of a sudden you'll find out that, wow, there's no spares for the B-1s and B-2s. We didn't buy them, and nobody can make them. And what have we got a lot of? We got B-52s. So I think you'll see B-52s around, perhaps outliving even the B-1 and possibly the B-2.
The B-52 will more than likely become a 21st century bomber, outliving her designer's wildest expectations. Some predictions have the buff in active service all the way to the year 2030, when even the youngest B-52 will be 68 years old.
We used to have a cartoon around nav school called Buffs in Space. You know, your son calling you, telling you got to buff to Mars.
You know, it's a big, ungainly, tough flying airplane, but everybody who's flown it loves it.
There's not very many classic airframes in the flying business, but the B-52 has to be one of them. Has to be one of them. If you talk about some of the old classic cars, I would throw a B-52 in the same vein in terms of airplanes.
The B-52 was born of unique people and circumstances in a country which created this ultimate weapon only to realize it should never be used in a nuclear role. When it flies its final mission well into the next century, the B-52 will likely be remembered as a giant in the sky.